The cell was cold. Not the kind of cold you feel in winter on Earth. No, this was a dead cold. A cold without wind, without the smell of snow, without the warmth of a distant sun. It was the cold of a place that had never known life. Captain. Daniel Rourke sat against the far wall, chains around his wrists and ankles. His uniform was torn. His lips were dry and cracked. The floor was made of black metal, rough under his skin. Above him, a single point of dim light flickered. It wasn't enough to see the cell clearly. The shadows were thick. They clung to the walls like living things. He could hear the hum of the alien warship around him. A deep, constant vibration that never stopped. It was the sound of the They. Dominion, a civilization that had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. They were older than human history, older than human memory. And they wanted one thing from Daniel Rourke. They wanted to break him. The They had studied humans since the war began. They had taken prisoners from every battle. Soldiers, engineers, even civilians. Every one of them had eventually given up, crying, begging, or simply staring into nothing until they died. The They believed the human mind was fragile. They believed hope was a weakness. Daniel was their newest experiment. The first day, they had tried to make him speak. They brought food and placed it on the floor. They told him, in broken human language, that all he had to do was tell them Earth's fleet codes. In return, they would free him. Daniel had looked at the food, then at them. Then he closed his eyes and said nothing. The second day, they took the light away. Total darkness filled the cell. They pumped in the sound of cities burning, explosions, screams, sirens. The recordings were real. Daniel knew that the third day, they gave him the light back. But no food, no water. The fourth day, they showed him holograms of Earth's capital under attack. The fifth, they replayed footage of soldiers he had fought beside, lying dead in the streets. Each day, they tried something different. And each day, Daniel sat in silence. The guards spoke in their own language, believing he could not understand. But Daniel had spent the first weeks after his capture listening carefully. He had learned enough to pick out words and meanings. "He will break soon," one guard said. "His eyes will empty like the others," another replied. Daniel didn't react. His face was still. His breathing steady. In the dark, when the guards left, a small smile touched his lips. The They didn't know that Daniel had survived worse. They didn't know about the crash on Titan's surface, where he had gone 4 days without heat before rescue. They didn't know about the deep-sea training exercise where his oxygen tank failed, and he had to swim blind through freezing black water to reach safety. They didn't know that, long before the war, he had grown up in a place where giving up meant dying. The cell was nothing compared to those memories. The only thing Daniel feared was losing his mind to the silence. It wasn't just the lack of sound that was dangerous. It was the way the mind began to invent sounds. At night, he could swear he heard footsteps inside the cell. He could swear he heard his name whispered just behind his ear. The They wanted that. They wanted his mind to turn against him. But Daniel had a trick. He counted. He counted the seconds between the guards' visits. He counted the thrum of the ship's engines, the pattern of the power cycles. He counted the breaths he took each hour. It wasn't just to keep sane. It was information. Once, after what he guessed was 2 weeks, the guards came in with a translator device. "This is your final chance," the machine said in a flat voice. "Tell us the fleet codes, and we will send you home." Daniel looked up. His eyes were steady, his voice calm. "Send me home?" He asked, "Which home? The one you burned, or the one you haven't found yet?" The translator repeated his words in their language. The lead guard tilted its head. Daniel could hear the soft hiss of its breathing apparatus. The alien leaned closer. "We will strip you of every human thing. We will take your memories. We will take your name." Daniel smiled faintly. "Good luck with that." The guards left. This time they didn't come back for a long time. Daniel knew that meant they were planning something bigger. He listened. He could tell the ship had slowed. The vibration in the walls had changed. Somewhere above him, heavy doors were opening. The air smelled different, cleaner, colder. Then he heard it, the sound of boots on the metal floor, not the guards. These footsteps were heavier, slower. A new figure entered the cell. This one was taller, its armor more ornate. Its eyes glowed faint blue in the shadows. Daniel had seen one like it before, a Vaylith warden. They were the ones who handled the special prisoners. The warden stood there, studying him for a long time. "You do not fear us," the translator said in its deep, metallic voice. Daniel stayed silent. "You do not cry. You do not plead." Still, he said nothing. The warden took a slow step closer. "We know why. You believe you can escape." Daniel didn't look away. "Believe?" he said softly. "No, I know." The warden tilted its head, as if curious. Then it turned and left without another word. Hours passed. The cell was silent again. Daniel's chains felt heavier than before, but his smile returned. The Vaylith thought he was just being defiant. They didn't understand that every day he spent alive was a victory. Every breath he took meant their control was failing, and deep. In the dark, Daniel began to hum a song from Earth. It was barely above a whisper, but it carried through the walls. Far away, in another cell, someone tapped 3 times in response. Daniel froze. Then he tapped back. For the first time since his capture, he knew he wasn't alone. End of part 1. Hint: the Vaylith thought they were breaking one human. They didn't. See that he had just found the first piece of something far more dangerous. The cold metal walls of the prison cell had grown familiar to Daniel Rourke, but they did not comfort him. Each day was different, but the pain and fear stayed the same. The Vaylith Dominion had not stopped trying to break him. They wanted to destroy his mind and his spirit. For days now, Daniel had felt like he was trapped inside a nightmare that never ended. But he was still alive, still waiting. One morning, the door to his cell opened with a loud hiss. 2 tall, armored Vaylith guards stepped inside, carrying a small device that glowed with a strange blue light. Behind them followed a warden, the one with glowing blue eyes, who watched Daniel carefully. The guards chained Daniel's wrists and ankles to a metal chair placed in the center of the room. His muscles ached from the cold and the chains. But Daniel didn't struggle. The warden activated the blue device. From it, a thin beam of light scanned Daniel's face, neck, and hands. The beam moved slowly, as if searching for something hidden. "You will answer our questions," the warden said through the translator device, "or you will suffer more." Daniel looked at the warden without fear. His voice was calm but quiet. "I will not answer." The warden's eyes flickered. It moved closer and touched the blue device. The beam grew brighter and hotter, focusing on Daniel's wrist chains. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through Daniel's arm. He clenched his teeth, but did not scream. The beam left a mark on his skin, a thin, burning line. "Your pain is nothing," the warden said. "Your mind will break before your body." Daniel swallowed hard. He thought about the things he had survived before: the cold of Titan, the deep sea, the endless nights of loneliness. This pain was nothing compared to that. For hours, the Vaylith kept him in the chair, shining the blue light over his body, asking questions he refused to answer. They showed him images of Earth burning again and again, cities in flames, people running, families destroyed. They wanted him to speak, to give them the codes of Earth's defense fleet, to tell them the secrets of the resistance. But Daniel's mind was sharper than they thought. In the quiet moments between questions, Daniel focused on the small sounds in the room. The soft hum of the ship's engines, the distant footsteps of guards outside, the faint buzz of the light above. He counted each breath he took. He timed each moment. Daniel knew the Vaylith studied him closely. They watched how long he could stay silent. They watched his eyes, waiting for the moment they would see fear. But fear did not come. One day, the warden brought another prisoner into the room. It was a young woman, dressed in ragged clothes, her eyes wide with terror. Her name was Leela. She had been captured weeks before Daniel. She looked broken, her spirit crushed by the endless torture. Daniel watched her quietly. When the warden left, he spoke to her softly. "Don't give up," he whispered. "You are stronger than you think." Leela's eyes filled with tears. "How do you stay strong?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "Because I remember who I am. I remember where I come from. And I know they cannot take that away from me." The Vailith did not like the change in Leela. She began to resist. She stopped crying. She started asking questions. The Vailith increased their experiments. They put Daniel and Leela through simulated nightmares, illusions so real they could feel the heat of flames and the cold of the ocean. But Daniel stayed calm. He closed his eyes and breathed slowly. He focused on his memories, a warm fire back home, his mother's voice, the sound of rain on the window. The Vailith grew angry. They did not understand why Daniel did not break. They believed the human mind was weak, that fear would destroy him, but Daniel's strength was something new. Something dangerous. In the quiet moments of his prison cell, Daniel began to plan. He watched the guards closely. He learned their routines. He listened to their conversations when they thought he was asleep. He discovered the patterns in the ship's power cycles. He noticed when the lights would flicker, when the doors would lock and unlock. One night, as the ship passed through a dangerous asteroid field, the power went out for a few seconds. Daniel felt the darkness close in around him. But he also felt a spark of hope. In the silence, he tapped a rhythm on the metal wall of his cell, a simple code he had learned in training. A moment later, a faint tapping answered back. Daniel smiled. He was not alone. The Vailith kept trying to break him. They tried new methods, loud noises, bright lights, isolation. They even used drugs that blurred his mind and made him dizzy. But Daniel's mind stayed clear. He remembered his training. He remembered the lessons of survival. Most importantly, he remembered the reason he could never give up. In the darkest moments, Daniel thought of Earth. Of the people fighting to protect their home, of the families waiting for their soldiers to return. He thought of the children who dreamed of a better future. He thought of hope. And no matter what the Vailith did, Daniel's spirit refused to break, because the more they tried to destroy him, the stronger he became, because they did not know that breaking one human could create something far worse, a spirit that could not be crushed. Daniel had learned something important. The Vailith's power was not in their weapons or their technology. It was in their fear, and Daniel was no longer afraid. The days in the prison ship grew darker and colder, but something inside Daniel Rourke refused to die. Despite the pain and the endless experiments, despite the hunger gnawing at his stomach and the cold biting through his uniform, he held on. Not just for himself, but for the others. Since the arrival of Leela, the young prisoner who had been broken by the Vailith but was slowly regaining her will, Daniel began to notice a change among the other captives. Before, the prisoners were silent, empty shadows in their cells. Now faint whispers floated through the darkness. The Vailith had underestimated one thing: the power of the human spirit. In the shadowed halls, Daniel shared his strength quietly. "Remember who you are," he whispered to the prisoners during brief moments when guards were distracted. "We are human. We do not break." His words were simple but powerful, echoing in the silence like a rising wind. Some prisoners began to stop crying. Some stopped begging. Some started to look at the guards, not with fear, but with quiet defiance. The Vailith noticed in their cold and distant command chambers. The alien leaders watched the prisoner cells carefully. The warden who had spoken to Daniel before reported the strange change. These humans, they do not break as expected. it said to the commander. Their spirits grow stronger, not weaker, the commander frowned. Increase the punishments. Break them harder. But the harder the Valith pushed, the more the humans resisted. Daniel's quiet words became a beacon of hope. A prisoner named Marcus, once weak and silent, now sat straighter in his cell. Another prisoner, Ilara, began humming songs from Earth. Songs of freedom, songs of home. One day, Daniel heard a soft knock on the metal walls of his cell. It was the first message since their secret tapping started. Tap, tap, tap. He tapped back quickly. This was the beginning of something new. A secret communication. Daniel had learned to listen closely. Each prisoner tapped messages back and forth, sharing information, hope, and strength. The walls of the prison ship were no longer silent. They were alive with whispers of rebellion. They shared guard routines, the times when lights flickered, and the moments when doors could be opened. They shared memories, stories of home, dreams of freedom. The Valith had created one prisoner. They had trapped hundreds. But they had awakened a force they could not control. Daniel knew the guards were watching him closely now. They had increased the number of checks. They searched his cell for any signs of rebellion, but they could not find the invisible threads he had woven, the secret network of human voices. Tapping on the walls, the prison ship moved slowly through space, carrying the captured humans deeper into enemy territory. The prisoner's hope was a dangerous light in the darkness. One evening, as Daniel sat in his cell, he closed his eyes and listened. He could hear faint footsteps in the corridor, guards on their patrol. He could hear the hum of the ship's engines. And beneath it all, he heard the soft tapping. It was the sound of a new beginning. Days passed. The humans communicated in their secret code, growing stronger with every message. Layla, now brighter and stronger, whispered to Daniel one night through the darkness. "We can't just survive," she said. "We have to fight back." Daniel nodded. "And we will, but first we need a plan." They began to gather small tools, scraps of metal from broken equipment, pieces of wires from old machines, tiny bits of cloth from their uniforms. Daniel taught the others how to use these items carefully, how to unlock simple locks, how to move quietly. They worked together in the dark, building a plan piece by piece. The Valith did not know what was happening. Their guards grew tired. Their confidence grew weak. The prisoners were no longer the broken humans they expected. They were becoming something new. Daniel thought about the war he had left behind on Earth, about the friends he had lost and the family waiting for him. He knew that escaping this prison ship was only the first step. The real fight would come after. The first spark of rebellion had been lit in the darkest place. The Valith Dominion had tried to break the human spirit. Instead, they had created something far worse. The humans were no longer prisoners. They were a hidden storm, ready to rise. The prison ship drifted through the dark void of space, cold and silent. But inside its metal walls, a fire was starting to burn. Daniel Rourke sat in his cell, the chains cold on his wrists but his mind sharp. The tapping on the walls had grown louder over the past days, a secret language spreading through the prison like wildfire. He tapped back, faster this time, sending messages to prisoners he had never seen but felt close to, as if their spirits were linked in the darkness. Every knock, every tap, carried hope. It told stories. We are still here. We are strong. We will escape. Daniel could feel the power in those sounds. The Valith guards thought they had prisoners. They didn't realize those prisoners were becoming a force. Daniel had learned the patterns of the ship, the guards' shifts, the moments when the lights flickered, the times when the heavy doors unlocked for maintenance. With each secret message, the prisoners shared what they had seen. A broken lock here, a guard who left keys unattended there. Small details but important ones. The most dangerous moment came when the ship passed through a dense asteroid field. The rocks outside hammered the ship's hull. The ship shook and rattled with every hit. The engines groaned under the pressure. For a few seconds, the power went out. The lights flickered and died. The metal walls fell into darkness. It was in this silence that Daniel made his move. He started tapping again, sending a signal to the other cells. Now. One by one, taps returned. The prisoners understood. Daniel had managed to steal small pieces of metal from the guards' broken tools, hidden them in his clothes. Others had gathered scraps from old machines and wires from the ship's systems. Together, they had made crude tools, lockpicks, wires to jam sensors, small weapons fashioned from scrap. As the lights flickered back on, chains fell away from many prisoners. Doors unlocked with the stolen keys. A wave of quiet but fierce movement spread through the prison ship. Daniel led the charge out of his cell. The guards were surprised. Their weapons raised, but the prisoners were fast and determined. They fought like nothing the Valith had ever seen, like a single mind with one goal: freedom. Daniel felt every heartbeat in sync with the others. Fear was still there, but it was replaced by a burning rage and hope. Together, they pushed through the corridors, moving from cell to cell, freeing others. The tapping on the walls turned into shouts, war cries that echoed through the steel halls. Valith commander, watching from the bridge, could hardly believe what he saw. "How can this be?" he demanded. "They were supposed to break. They were supposed to surrender." The warden stood beside him, silent but watching carefully. "They have become something else," the warden said. "Something far worse than broken prisoners." Daniel and the freed prisoners reached the control room, their faces hard and determined. "This ship is ours now," Daniel said, voice steady and cold. "We are not just survivors. We are fighters." The prisoners cheered softly, ready for what was next. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. The war was far from over, but inside the prison ship, a new war had begun. A war where humans fought with every ounce of strength, spirit, and hope. A war where the Valith had awakened something they could never control. Freedom was close, but the real battle for survival, for honor, for Earth, was only just beginning. The prison ship was shaking, rattling like a frightened beast caught in the asteroid field. Outside, space rocks slammed against the hull with fierce blows, sounding like thunder in the endless dark. Inside, Daniel Rourke moved quickly through the narrow corridors with the other freed prisoners. Their eyes burned with determination. The chains that had bound them were gone, but the fight was far from over. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. Every moment counted. The plan had come together slowly, piece by piece, through secret taps and whispered messages. Now it was time to act. The prisoners had prepared carefully. They had hidden tools and weapons, small but deadly. They had memorized guard shifts and security systems. They had learned the ship's weaknesses. Now, all they needed was the right moment. That moment came with the warning alarms. The asteroid field outside was tearing through the ship's shields. The Valith guards scrambled to control stations, running frantic orders through their radios. Their confidence was shattered. Daniel raised his hand. Now, the prisoners surged forward. They moved like shadows. Swift and silent. Guards fired their energy weapons, but the humans dodged and fought back with everything they had. Makeshift knives, broken metal bars, even bare fists. The narrow hallways became battlefields. Daniel fought fiercely, his mind clear and focused. He remembered every lesson from his past, every fight, every narrow escape. He moved like a storm, breaking through the enemy lines, freeing more prisoners as he went. The Valith guards underestimated human strength and will. They were trained warriors, but they were not ready for a united, desperate group fighting for their lives. Through the chaos, Daniel reached the control room. It was heavily guarded, but the prisoners pressed on. They had to take control of the ship. The leader of the Valith soldiers stood tall, energy weapon raised. "You will surrender," he shouted, voice cold and commanding. Daniel stepped forward. his eyes burning with fierce light. "We do not surrender," he said simply. The battle was fierce, but the prisoners fought with a strength the Valeth could not match. One by one, the guards fell back. Finally, Daniel and the prisoners seized the control room. He took the captain's chair, hands steady on the controls. The ship was theirs. Outside, the stars stretched endless and cold. But inside the prison ship, a new light had been born. A light of hope, of strength, of rebellion. Daniel looked at the prisoners gathered around him. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We fight now, not just to survive, but to win." The humans had taken back their prison. But the war was far from over. The Valeth would not forget this day. The Valeth commander stood on the bridge of the warship, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. The red glow of alarms flashed across his face. The ship, once a symbol of their power, was lost. Taken by the humans they had tried to break. "They were supposed to surrender," the commander hissed, voice low and angry. "They were meant to give up their minds and their spirits." The warden, standing silent beside him, shook its glowing blue head. "No," it said. "You did not break them. You created something far worse. Far worse than broken prisoners. Far worse than defeated soldiers. You created warriors fueled by pain, sharpened by suffering, united by hope." Daniel Rourke stood in the ship's control room, surrounded by the freed prisoners. His eyes burned with fierce determination. "We're done surviving," he said. "Now we take the fight to them." The prisoners cheered quietly. The war was not over. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. But inside the ship, a new force was rising, a force the Valeth had never imagined. Daniel tapped a message on the console, a message to Earth's fleet. "We are alive, we are free, and we are coming home." The Valeth Dominion had tried to break the human spirit, but instead, they had forged something stronger, something unstoppable. The war was far from over, but this time, the humans would fight on their terms. The galaxy would soon learn the human spirit is not so easy to break.